Hi everyone, I'm Paulette Morrissey from Tulip Square, and this week we're going to finish our pincushion dolls. We've already done 2 weeks where we made the heads and the clay and all that parts, and we made all the sewn parts and everything. And this week we're putting it all together and finishing them so they'll be all done and set to go. And here's another one that I just finished. So we're going to have a couple different ones finished. And this week we're going to put her together. She's got her little head, and we've got all her parts here sewn. So we're going to head over to my work table and we're going to get her put together. Let's go. All right, time to get everything put together now. We're going to finish her today. So we're going to start by taking her body piece, and I'm going to turn it right side out. And then along that top edge, where it's got the fold, I'm going to run a gathering thread just about, maybe it's very close to the top, and maybe stitches about 1/4 inch apart. And just go all the way around. Keep them close to the fold, but not so close that you're not grabbing a good chunk of thread. And you need to use a nice strong thread. Leave a good tail so we can tie that. This is like a weaving cotton, but you can also use regular string. You can use strong upholstery thread or carpet thread. 3 strands of embroidery floss. Something really strong so that it won't rip when you give it a good pull. I've gotten a good pull here. Okay, now we've got all like this. Now you're going to take her head and you're going to put her head into the top of this and make sure all of these threads and all of these parts of her little scarf all get down, tucked down in there really nicely so nothing is sticking out. And you want the back of her body seam on the back of her head. So these all line up nicely. And then I'm going to lay her face down, and you should probably work on a towel or something so when you're mashing her around and things like that, she's not going to get damaged. And then I'm going to, I'm going to tie this right here, and I'm going to do a surgeon's knot, which is the same as the first half of a square knot, except I'm going to go through that loop just once more. So you got one extra little loop on here. I'll show you that again. This is the first half of a square knot, just in and out like you're going to tie your shoes or something, like so. And to make it a surgeon's knot, you just go back through that loop once more. That way when you pull it down and you pull it really tight, it tends to stay there. It doesn't want to loosen up a little bit. So then you can go ahead and do the other half of the knot, like so. And then I like to just wrap it around her head once or twice and tie it once more. I like to tie it in the back so nothing shows in the front ever. The surgeon knot is a good knot to keep your work nice and tight when you don't have an extra hand to put a finger on the knot for you, like so. And then so it doesn't show anywhere, I'm just going to take my needle and I'm going to stick it in really close to those knots and just pull it out somewhere else, just so I don't have the thread ends visible. And then I'm going to take this one and do the same thing. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the other half. I'm just going to take it, put it back in close to where the knot is, and pull it through somewhere else. And then I can cut those both off. And then the longer piece, put back on your needle because you're going to need that for the bottom in a minute. I'm going to tie a knot down here. I'm going to set that aside for just a minute. Now, here's what you've got so far. Now we're going to stuff her little torso part, her little body part. Don't use little tiny balls of stuffing. Use nice big fluffy chunks. And I like to work around. Don't just work right from the front because then you'll have a big bump in the front and nothing in the back. So as you put pieces in, rotate her body. Put her a little bit in, shove it up, and turn her a little bit more. And you want this to be very firm, firmest of firm, okay? So get it in your, which is why we used a strong thread. Just shove it up nice and tight. And this is also why we double stitch the back seam. We're giving them a little bit of a workout here. You want this nice and tight, and you want it almost all the way to the bottom. And if you're wondering why we sewed all the pieces for a doll in a orange dress last week, and we're putting together a doll in a green dress, it's because, let me show you, one in the orange dress is all done, and I carefully put her together and recorded the whole thing, but I forgot to turn on the camera. So I didn't realize that till it was all done. So she's done, and we're working on somebody in a green dress instead. Okay, so I've got that nice and firm. Get a little bit more in there, I think, but it's good. I'm just going to take that needle and thread, and I'm going to just sew this bottom closed. And this does not need to be pretty. Don't go too close to the edges because we don't want these to rip out. I just don't want it to come open when we're stuffing the body. I don't want any of this stuffing to escape. Nice and tight like this. It's good. And I'm just going to tie it off and cut it. Done. Okay, and your back seam is on the back of the doll. If it's not, you can kind of twist it a little bit. Probably not a lot. Okay, so she is ready for her body now. What you need to do before you start this, it's probably better to get this ready, is you're going to need, on one needle, you're going to need about 3 feet of a strong, really strong string, doubled. So it's 3 feet doubled, so it starts out to be about 6 feet long. And this is this is a weaving cotton. You need a really strong string. You need about 4 strands of embroidery floss, or doubled upholstery thread or carpet thread, something really strong so that when you pull it, no matter how you pull it, you can't break it. So you're going to need that. Just keep that handy because you don't want to have to do that once you're halfway through this next step. And the other thing you want to have handy is a good length of thread in the color of her skirt, which in this case is the same as her bodice. So this is just doubled floss. You want a good length of that ready too. So keep those two ready. Now we're going to take her skirt, turn it inside out, and find the seam that has, I didn't leave an opening. Oops. Okay. We're just going to keep talking for a minute while I make an opening. Can't believe I didn't do that. A seam ripper and rip us an opening. All right, so now what you're going to do is you're going to take your skirt piece, leave it inside out or turn it inside out, and find the seam that has the opening for stuffing. And then you're going to take your little head and bodice, turn it upside down, and with the back seam here lined up with that back seam that has the opening in it, you're going to push her body through to the opening in the skirt. And this will be pretty snug, and you want it snug, okay? And then what you're going to do is ease the skirt up. Just keep pulling it up and up and up. And just keep working it around. It's got to be snug because it's going to be tight. And you're trying to keep the front panel of the skirt in the front of the body, and that back seam with the opening in it lined up with the back seam. And what you're going to do is keep bringing this up until it's about an inch from here to here, from her chin to the top of the dress, which is where it is right about now. So you're going to work it up about that much. And then you're going to leave about a half an inch, or between a half and a quarter of an inch is not going to be folded up. You're going to leave that down so that when you turn this right side out, part of that is still tucked under. Now you see what I mean? I'm folding it right about here. So there's about a half an inch of it under here for our little seam allowance. Then you're going to take your thread and needle that has the same color thread as the dress, and I'm going to start under her skirt so you don't even see the knot. Come out up here. And I'm going to work my way all the way around, attaching the skirt to the bodice with little stitches about every quarter inch. And for the most part, these are never going to show, because she'll have her apron on and she'll have her little shawl. But just in case they show in a spot or two, we would like them not to be glaringly obvious. I'm just going all the way around her body. And when I get to the back, I'm just going to make a knot back here. Catch it once and make a nice little knot. And then I'm going to go around it again, and I'm going to put these stitches kind of like in between the space from the previous row of stitches. So you're still going to go a quarter of an inch between each stitch, but they're going to be between your previous rows. Because when we start stuffing this skirt, we're going to be pushing and pulling a lot on this area, and we do not want anything coming loose. I'm just going between the previous round of stitching, still being about a quarter of an inch apart. Pretty fabric. I want to get to the back again. I'm going to knot it a couple times this time. I'm just knotting it by going through here and then up through that loop and pulling it really tight. And then I'm going to bury the end of the thread, like so. Okay, we've taken care of that. Now we've got this. Front of her skirt is centered on the front of her body. So she's in good shape. Now, get her arms out of the way. You're going to stuff her body. And you're going to stuff it pretty firmly, okay? And what you have to do is use big chunks. And see, I've got a really big pile of stuffing over here. All of this, and that's probably all going in her. So we're going to start just working our way around. And as before, keep turning her so you don't have any big spots, big lumps in the front and no lumps in the back or anything. Just keep going around. And don't worry about that opening in the back. Some stuffing will poke out of it a little bit, but we'll take care of that later. We're not doing all of our stuffing just yet. Use my finger and get all the way up to the top. Take it all the way up by her waist there. Remember, don't use little tiny balls of stuffing or you'll just have little lumps all over the place. I'm using big strands like this, big chunks. Stuff it in. Turn her and stuff some more and turn her. Try to keep her head on a towel or something. We want her nice and firm. Her body is very firm. This is very squishy yet. Okay, now when we get her to about this point, this is still very squishy. What you need to do is take that big long thread that you've threaded, and you're going to run a running stitch, a gathering stitch. Stay about a ½ inch away from the edge. And the stitches only have to be like a ½ inch or so long. They don't need to be small stitches. And make sure you've got a good knot in the end of this because we're going to catch the knot instead of leaving 2 ends. So keep an end that you can tie a knot, that you've got a knot in it. I'm just going to go around the edge and stay about a ½ inch away so there's no way this can rip through when you're pulling on it. Keep your poor little head on a towel or something because she's going to get bopped around a bit. You can also do this step before you put any of the stuffing in, but then there's a tendency to kind of get the thread caught in the stuffing, so I don't usually do that. Not any sooner than I have to, because in a minute we'll have to finish our stuffing with this stuff here. Now, I'm not gathering this yet. I'm leaving it as wide as the fabric is. You need the whole opening. All right. Then I'm going to go through here. I don't lose that later on, but I'm not going to pull that tight yet. Okay, so now you've got this, and there's still plenty of give in here. There's still plenty of space. So I'm going to take my 5-inch wooden disc, this end in. Tacky little sticker on the back of it that I'm just going to remove. Okay, I'm going to put that in here. And this part's a little tricky, but if you hang on to one side and go around, and if you're having too much trouble, it's because you've already got too much stuffing in the body, because it should go in pretty easy at this point because it's not stuffed very much. I'm going to go all the way around so that all of this thread you just stitched is on the back of the circle. A little bit more over here. This is where if you had a couple extra hands, it would work nicer. I'm going to take out a little bit of stuffing. That's what you have to do sometimes. Take it out just to make this step a little easier. We need this to go all the way onto the body, like so. You want the white stitching that you just did. Whoops, bang the camera around a bit. I'm going to pull my thread now. And gather this a little bit tighter. And I want to make sure that you've got a good amount of it on the bottom like this, okay? You don't want it right up to the edge here. You want it tucked in pretty good. And then you find your beginning thread and you pull it. And when you get to that knot that you looped through, then you can pull it even tighter like so. Okay, so you've got it like this, nice and snug and tight. So then what I'm going to do, I'm sure I've got it as tight as I want it, and I don't want to pull it any tighter, or I'm just going to shorten her skirt. So this is good right here. You don't want to pull 2 inches of it under here so that you're just making her skirt real small. You do want, I would say, close to an inch all the way under, at least 3/4 of an inch. And I'm just going to tie a good knot here so it can't loosen up when we're pulling on it. That's good. Now, don't cut that thread. We're going to need that to finish that off later. Now, you're going to finish stuffing her. See, she's very squishy yet, but now we can stuff her as tight as she needs to be stuffed because there's nowhere else for the stuffing to go. So in that little opening we left, you start stuffing. This is where you get most of the stuffing done. Push it. I find my thumb is the easiest. Push some forward, push some to the left, push some to the right. I like to get the top half of her body first. And this, depending on where you push her bodice that's in here, you can get her to look up or down or whatever. So far she's looking pretty straight ahead. But see, by using the bigger pieces of stuffing, you're not getting her a lumpy body, and we don't want her to be lumpy. But we do want her to be very firm because she's a pincushion. You want pins to just go in there and stay there where they're supposed to stay. Just keep pushing it in there. I got the top part done pretty good, and now I'm just going to start working towards the bottom here where she needs a little more stuffing. People use a lot of different tools. I seem to like my fingers the best. Getting there. Not there yet. Need some way down here. She's got an empty spot right there I can see. A bottomless pit here. You just keep poking it in and poking it in, and you think you're done. Almost done. A little bit right here. Make sure she's got no weird little lumps anywhere. She looks nice and smooth. Okay, so now you're going to take a needle and thread with that same color of thread as her skirt. I should have enough left right here from doing her waistline. And I like to start at the bottom here, but you can do whatever works better for you. I'm going to start just a little bit below the opening. And then I'm going to go pick up a bit of thread of fabric from that side of the seam and a bit from that side. I want you to see what I did there. Picking up a little thread here and a little, not thread, a little bit of a few threads of fabric on each side of the seam. And then I'm going to pull. And then I'm going to do the same thing right here. I'm not taking the actual edge of the seam. I'm just taking some fabric on each side of it. This way it's forcing these raw edges to go to the inside. I'm going to take a little bit over here before the fold and a little bit over here, like that. I'm going to give that a good tug, and not so much of a tug that I rip the thread, because you will rip the thread otherwise. And if you can hold that tight with one hand while you do the next one, it works great, but you always end up having to let go of it. Just take your time with this step. Whoops, lost my thread. And as you go along, it will just start closing up pretty nicely. And I just lost my needle here. This is why she wears a little shawl draped down her back, is because you cover these little stitches. Once you get about halfway going, it goes a lot easier because it's starting to close up on its own. You can see that. If you have a little gap here and you need a little bit more stuffing, add it before you close it up. I think I'm good. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to overlap the first couple stitches up here too, just for good measure. There. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to poke it in. If not, and bring it out someplace else. We don't have any little knot ends right by our seams. She's nice and firm. Bottom is nice and secure. One thing I forgot to put in the materials list that isn't absolutely necessary, but it's kind of a nice touch, is when the doll is all done, if you want to, you can cut a little circle, a little bit smaller than 5 inches, out of felt or heavy cardboard or something, and just glue it to the bottom so it's not visible. I think I did that on one of these early ones, like so. It's just a piece of felt. It just kind of makes it look a little more finished. A piece of cardboard would work too. Cardstock. Anything that doesn't have a raw edge. Okay, now we got that part done. We're going to take this needle that's still attached, and I'm just going to run it where it's from where the knot is over here. I'm just going to bring it like across body, across the bottom of the base, whatever the heck it is. I'm going to give it a pull, just like so. Then I'm going to do another one over here. A little reinforcing. Not fun pulling out this needle though. Just like so. Maybe one over here. And I'm going before the thread and under the fabric. That's why it's a fun thing to try and get it out of there. So landing your doll on her head. And just pull it snug. And I'll go across to here one more time. There we go. Like so. And then I'm just going to knot it over here. It's just a little extra security measure. So I'm just going to knot this off. Hold tight. Like so. Maybe one more knot over here. I like lots of extra knots. There. Cut that off, and that will actually get tucked in when I put a little fabric on the bottom. So now we've got that much done. Now we're going to take her apron. Now what we're going to need next is fabric to thread to match this apron. I'm going to use 3 strands of floss, of a green floss. And I'm going to start by burying the back of the knot behind the top edge of the apron. I'm going to come out at a front corner. And then I'm going to run a gathering stitch along the top of the apron. Once again, about 1/4 inch stitches, very close to the top edge. Like so. Okay, now I'm going to pull this up so it's about approximately 2 inches wide. Okay, not exact. But what it's going to be is about the width from this seam to this seam. And that's where it's going to go. So I'm going to lay her down, and I'm going to put a pin in each of the lower corners. Because she has to go above, the apron has to go above the wooden base. I'm going to put one over there, and one over here, like so. Now you don't need to sew the bottom edge of the apron down. I don't ever bother. And then I'm going to put one at this corner, at this seam where I want it to go, right to there. And the other one, I'm going to gather it up a little bit over here. And I'm going to put another pin right there. See, she's already being used as a pincushion. So that gathering gives you a little more space in your pocket, see. Now I'm just going to take that same thread, and I'm going to run back across the top of this and just tack down the skirt onto the, tack down the apron onto the skirt, keeping it gathered. I'm just going to lay her down like this, and I'm just going to start here with the knot, and I'm just right on that seam. If you had a nickel for every time I said just, you'd probably be rich. I'm kind of moving it, gathering, so it's even across. Now I'm just going to go up here. Gives a little more looseness to the pockets, so they've got a little more room to put stuff in. These stitches aren't real close together, not much more than I'd say a little under 1/2 inch apart. Every other raised little bump, I guess. Like so. Then I'm going to get rid of that pin. Oops. And I'm going to knot this corner down under there. Like so. one came out of the bottom of her skirt here. And then I'm just going to go down the side of her skirt and tack it down. Now you can do this as visible or invisible as you want. I don't find it offensive to have the stitches visible. I kind of like the look, but you can do some kind of an invisible stitch. It's also easier to do this one when you get to the where you have to deal with the wood in your way. So keep that in mind when you're sewing one of these down. And you want something nice and sturdy. I take that bottom pin out. And I'm catching a good amount of thread on both pieces of the fabric. Down to the bottom, I'm just going to do a knot. And take that out, like so. I'm going to knot that and take it to the other side of the apron and do the same thing. Start at the top, only I'm going to hide the knot underneath the apron, like so. Hide it under there nicely. Then I'm going to do the same thing, just right down the side. And you could, of course, get decorative with these. You could do this with buttonhole stitch or blanket stitch or a fly stitch. You could do little French knots along the edge, whatever you want. You could even add beads and stuff and get really fancy. Whatever's fun. They look cute when they're embellished a lot. But I'm just giving you the basics in this series so that you can use your imagination and do whatever you want to finish them up. That last pin out here. Couple knots in this corner. And then pull it out. And the apron is attached. Okay, now we're this far. She likes to tilt her head a little bit. Now you've got room in your pockets to put. Okay, now we're going to put their arms on. I've already got each arm sewn. The glue is obviously dried. And we're going to put one arm so it hangs just about by the edge of that apron. Then I'm just going to stitch this down up here. I'm going to turn under the top edge so you don't have a raw edge in the way. I'm just going to stitch it down nice and firmly across that top folded edge. And get rid of the end of it. And I'm going to leave that thread for later. I might need that. So I'm just going to set that aside. So she's got one arm. We're going to do the same thing with the other arm, which I still have that one also threaded and ready to go. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go about just hanging like right around the edge of the skirt, like so. I'm going to tuck under the top edge a little. And I'm going to stitch it down right about there. some other ideas for these dolls. If you want to make them and you don't know anybody who sews, you could make an apron with slightly deeper pockets, and you could use it to hold pencils and pens at a desk, colored pencils, paint brushes, even little kitchen utensils, little measuring cups in the pockets or something. Not measuring cups, measuring spoons. Can you tell I don't cook a lot? I don't know the difference between a measuring cup and a spoon. Not that one also. Next, we have, let's see what we're thinking about. Here we got our little lady, like so. She needs her shawl, and she needs her hands in her pocket. Okay, she needs her shawl. And if you cut a rectangle of fabric, like we did with all these other ones, and you can see this one has, let me just back this up a little bit. This one has a piece of a woven remnant for her shawl. This one that I was supposed to be doing today, it's got this little flowered fabric that I frayed the edges, and she's got a cute little bead trim button. And this one has a really soft piece of flannel for her shawl. It's already been being used as a pincushion. Lots of stuff on her, see? Okay, so on this one I thought I would try a little crocheted shawl, and I just made this little crocheted shawl. It's just a single crochet until it was as wide as I wanted it, and actually it's probably too wide, but I just wanted to see how she would look with a little crocheted shawl, like so. A little longer than I'd like, but I guess she can use it. We're going to tuck this end under here and bring this one around like so, and tuck this one under here, except her arms aren't really staying in her pockets. Like a nice little shawl like that. So I think we'll leave that for her. And it's kind of curled under and folded under around her neck, like so. So that'll work. And if you knit or crochet a piece, play around with the size, and you know, you can make it work, or you can rip it out and make another one. Just don't make it so long that it gets in the way of the pockets. So I'm not sure I'm loving this one. I think I'll just pull those over to the sides, like it's almost like a little sweater. He doesn't care. She's happy with it. I think I'll do that. And then what I can do is pin that down to see if I like it there. I'll put a pin over here and a pin over here. You would have that. And then of course she needs a little basket. And if you crocheted a little basket like in the instructions, these are just little baskets like this. I like to put them, sometimes I put them down like this one is, like she's holding it behind the basket. This one, she's got her hand in the basket like she's holding it. Put her little thumb there, like she's holding the top of the basket. All different ways. But I think she's going to be doing it. And you can put it on either side too. You just have a basket like this. That looks kind of good. And then for the other arm, you could give her another basket, or sometimes I like to do this. I stitch this arm up in place so that what her hand is holding there is whatever needle you happen to be using currently. So when you're sewing or something, she just holds on to that needle so you can keep track of your current needle. And this one, just for the fun of it, I crocheted her a simple little bag and stitched her hand down. Her hand is attached to her body here. And I just crocheted this little flat thing so you can put other stuff in there. But you can do whatever you want with that extra hand. It's just kind of fun. I think I'm going to take this one and I'm going to put it So she's hanging on to it down here like so. Going to have it like that, like she's tired of carrying it all the way up. So what you do for that is you need some thread the color of the basket. And then you got to figure out, you got to kind of play around and position this so it makes sense where you put it so that her hand, we can attach her hand so it looks like it's her, she's holding on to it. So I'm going to leave her hand where it is, and I'm going to put this, so it's going to be right here. So when I put her hand there, I will attach her hand so she's hanging onto the top of the basket. So right now I'm just going to put that right there so it's, I know where it's going, and I'm just going to pin her arm out of the way. Not in my way while I'm stitching this down. So all I'm going to do, starting on the back side of the basket, I'm going to go into the, into the fabric, because I know right where it's going now, so it's okay. Right like here. And I'm going to grab a loop here. I'm going to just go through near the top several of the stitches like so. See how many I've got? I'm through like so. Pull them up here. Make sure that's the positioning I want it. Put her hand down again. Yep, that's where I want it, right at the edge of her apron. Okay. I can just stick her hand in her pocket to get it out. And I'm going to catch the edge of her pocket and over onto her apron, and I've got a, not the edge of her pocket, edge of her apron. And I'm just going to pull that nice and snug. And I'm going to go back into a couple stitches. You can see where I'm coming out back here. I'll show you from this direction. Like so. And I'm just going to grab a few more strands. And I'm not going all the way through to the inside of the basket. I'm just taking some of the threads from the outside. So I can do that again right here, through the edge of the apron and out the side of the skirt. Pull it up nice and snug. I'm going to do one more. I'm going to go down through another lower layer of the basket and a slightly lower layer on her skirt. Like so. That looks pretty good. You want it sturdy, but not so it can't move at all. You got to be able to shift it around a little bit in case you're actually going to put stuff in it. I'm just going to go back over to that side of the skirt. Now, we've got it on her body nice and snug. So what I'm going to do is just work my way right back up to her hand by going back and forth through it a couple more times. Back through that back part and back through a couple layers of the basket. I want to get back up to the top of the basket. Back in the side of her skirt here, and I'm going to come out right at the top of the basket. And then I'm just going to take her hand and put it there, and I'm going to wrap this around her wrist right at her sleeve. And then I'm going to go in the body again and back out, catching her wrist in this stitch. Now she's got a good grip on the basket, and I'm just going to wrap it around her wrist once more and go back into her body once more, come back out the top back of the basket like here, like so. If you don't like those little stitches showing, you can poke them up under her sleeve if you want, but not all that noticeable. Or you could use thread that matched your skirt. And I'm just going to tie a knot in here. So Now, oops, now she's got a very high scarf here, so I don't know if she's going to need this little thing, but normally I like to take, yeah, we'll use it anyway. I like to take this little scarf tie we made, this little thing, in that open space we left. Oop, I'm going to lose my thread. I'm just using a couple of strands of embroidery floss again, and I'm just going to go in and out a couple times. Like twice. Kind of tighten it up. Now I'm going to wrap around it once. This is just to make it like a little gathered knot. And then I'm going to stitch it right up here at the front of her neckline of her dress, her bodice, body, whatever the heck it is. I'll bring it up there, and then I'm going to let it wrap around that knot again and go back in that same spot again. So, pull tight. And then if you don't like it sticking out like this, you can tack it down. Some of them I tack down and bring them down like this and tack them down. But she's got this big fat shawl that I'm not sure I'm going to use actually. I'm going to bring this through once more. And I think I'm going to bring one of these halves of this knot down just a little bit. And how you do that is just go on the underside of the knot somewhere and catch it, and then tack it down on her body wherever you want it. Just a little tack, like a couple of strands of the fabric, just like so. It doesn't have to be a lot. And then I can go over here, just go right through her body, come out on the other side, like so. And if I want to bring this one down, I'll do the same thing. Let's see, and if we want her over here, I'm just going to put a little tuck here. And sometimes you have to wait until her shawl is on before you do this, because you might want these little ties down on top of her shawl. So I'm not going to actually tack that one down. I'm just second guessing this shawl. It might be too big. Okay. I have taken a piece of fabric and frayed the edges. I seem to like that kind of shawl better. This was 5x6 and I like them off-centered a little bit. You could make it square, but I kind of like the two edges to be different when I fold it over her. So she's going to get this wrapped around her front like so. Need a lot of that thread out of the way. That's better. I like that better. And then I can take this bit of her little scarf thing, and I'm going to tack it down right through her scarf. I mean, right through her shawl. It comes down like so. I'm going to go back over on this side. This also helps secure her shawl. Like so. That's better. I think I want that. Get off there. Okay, now what I like to do is right where the shawl comes together, I like to put a little button or a bead or a seed or something that just looks kind of cute to finish it off. So I'm going to find a button that I like for that. I've got this one kind of, they're rather large beads, but kind of cute. You can see one on here. This little fat bead. Something like that. I'm going to see if I got something that would match this outfit here. I've got a little spirally green one. That might be kind of cute. I'll probably use that one. I've also got a little green flower. I already used the green flowers. And these are cute, but they're way too big. They're round instead of flat. So we're just going to use this little round spiral one. And I'm going to start by tightening it way under here, the knot, so you can't see it. The knot is into the body of the doll. And then I'm going to come out. Came out on the bottom layer of the shawl, and then I'm going to come out on the top layer of the shawl, kind of lined up with that first thread, like so. And then I'm going to put this little bead. Now you don't have to put a bead there. You can put a button, you can put a pin, you can put nothing. Doesn't matter. I just kind of like these. And I'm just going to stitch it in place like so. Down through all these layers again. And back to the button, the pin, the bead once more, like so. And I'm going to lift up her shawl here, come out over here on her body, and knot it over here so it's not visible ever. Good old hidden knots. So now you can poke that in and come way out on her back. And shawl back down where it belongs. Button to hold her shawl is in place. And for all intents and purposes, she is done. All she needs is to decide what I want to do with that other arm. Put her hand up where you want it to go. And the best way to figure that is to take a pin or needle and see where you'd like it to rest. Like so. That'd be a good place for it to be. Would her hand be better like this? Probably like that. Maybe even down a little bit. And this can just rest right here. That looks like a good spot. Or could it be even down here more? Maybe she wants hers down here. Yeah, I think we'll put hers down here. Off the apron. Then I'm just going to put her hand where I want it. Make sure it actually stops a needle. Okay. And then I'm going to go through the skirt, come in and out, like so. Catch that end knot. Oops, I guess I didn't have a knot. I'm just batting 1,000 today. If I did have a knot. Okay, let me just thread this needle once again. Okay, so I've got that. I'm going to cut those long threads off. We don't want those in our way. Okay. Put her arm where I want it. And I'm just going to wrap it around again. Just like we did for her other arm. Wrap it around her wrist. Times. And then around her body. Oops. Wrap it around the wrist. Go through the body. Around the wrist. Through the body. Like so. Make a little knot there. Bring it to the back, make another little knot. Can't have too many knots, right? That should be good. That off. Hold on. Now, when you're sewing, and you've got a set of needle aside with some thread on it or anything, just put it right there, and it's right there handy so you don't have to lose it. It doesn't get mixed in with all your other stuff. Up or down or however you want her to hold it. And you can even turn her hand if you want it a little bit. I think I could turn her hand a little here. Like so. So that ends the Pincushion doll 3-part series. I hope you enjoyed watching that and maybe even giving it a try. If you did, that's great. If you did, go ahead and post a couple pictures on our Facebook page. We'd love to see them. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and don't forget to come back every Saturday for a new video. And next week we'll be back to our quilt patterns. So have a good week, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.